Hello, guys. So, in this topic, this is a new topic. This is called genetics. We're going to be talking about this topic for a while. Now, today we're just going to focus on the vocabulary. There's just some basic words you need to know. So, make sure you copy along, follow along, and copy down the stuff that's on red. Okay. There's going to be a lot of practice on this one. On this might be a little bit of a long PowerPoint. Here we go. So, there's a video I'm not going to show you to you, but I just want you to understand that everybody in the world looks different, right? Even your siblings, you look different and everything. That has to do with the different traits that we got from our parents. And again, even if you have the same parents, you still got different things. So this topic, we're going to be calculating like what are the chances of you looking, or not you, right? Because you already look the way you look, but your kids looking a certain way. Okay. So first of all, what are genetics? What is genetics? Genetics is the study of heredity, which means how traits are passed from parents to offspring. So go ahead and copy that word. So again, genetics is just what we use to study and how the babies are going to look and things like that, or why we look the way we look. Now, first set of words that we're going to be using, traits and alleles, right? So a trait, you should know already, that's just a physical characteristic. So a characteristic that is passed on to offspring by parents through the genes. Example, nose shape, right? It could be the height, it could be skin color, it could be whatever, right? Any type of physical characteristic, that's called a trait. Now, an allele, this is a science word. An allele is we're going to use it for our calculations, and we're going to be using letters, right? They're very simple. Just know that an allele is going to be a letter, and it could be two options. There's always going to be two options. So it just says here the different version of the trait expressed with a single letter. So for example, it says pointy nose, we used a capital P. Brown eyes, we used a capital B. So let's practice. If you didn't write this word, write it down. So the key is key. So from now on, you should always be making a key. The first thing you do, they're going to give you a sentence. You need to figure out what the letters mean, right? So for example, here, it says, check for understanding number 1. Identify the alleles for each of the following traits. A white rabbit. Which letter will you use? W, because that's, white rabbit. The color is white. That's the trait. Red-eyed rabbit. Okay, the trait is going to be the color red. So R. Now, for pointed ears of a dog, pointed, that's a trait. So it's going to be P. Three-toed dinosaur. We're just getting crazy here. T. Right? You follow? You see what I'm saying? The trait, you have to find the trait. So the color or the shape or whatever they're giving you, that would be the letter you're going to use. What about brown eyes? That would be B. Okay? Pretty easy. Now, let's move on. The genotype versus the phenotype. This is a little bit more confusing, but it's still important. Go ahead and copy this, and then I'll explain. Let me move my face. Okay, so for this section, you definitely need to know the difference between genotype and phenotype. So genotype, when you talk about genotype, you're talking about genes. These are going to be letters. So we all have DNA, and the genes are different sections of a gene. I'm sorry, of a DNA, and that's going to give you a trait. So if you look here, for example, this is a chromosome. Instead of being in an X shape, they split it. So now it looks like this. There you have a lot of B's, right? You see the capital B, that means brown. And then the lowercase b means blue, right? So the different genotypes combinations, there's only 3 combinations, okay? So you can have capital B, and for example here, capital letter, that's 1. Now you can also have lowercase letter, that's number 2. Number 3, and last one, capital B, lowercase b, okay? That's it. Now, if you ever want to put lowercase b first and then capital B, that's wrong. You cannot do that. Okay, so don't ever put lowercase b first. It needs to be a capital first. If it's a capital in there, it needs to be first. Now let's talk about the phenotype. So genotype is letters in the genes. Phenotype is physical, okay? So physically, how does it look? So phenotype is the visible characteristics of an organism. So physically, you can tell me the color, the shape, the height, or whatever. So in this case, capital B is brown. Lowercase b is blue. That's it, right? Genotype is the letter combination. Phenotype is the physical look. Got it? That's one. So let's practice a little bit here. So what are the genotypes in this picture? Remember, genotype is letters. So which combination of letters do you see here? Well, look, you have capital T. Over here you have capital T, lowercase t. And then here at the bottom you have capital T, lowercase t. So you have all different combinations, right? Now, what are the phenotypes? Physically, how do those look? There's tall, and then there's dwarf. Over here it says tall again. You don't write tall again, same thing. Tall and dwarf, those are the two options. So what the letters mean. Okay, copy this down, moving on. Now, check for understanding number 3. Let's compare genotypes and phenotypes one more time. So, in corn plants, normal height, it's capital N. And that one is dominant to short height, lowercase n. Wait, so what are the genotypes? The letters, it's N, capital N, and lowercase n, right? They give it to you right here. Capital N, lowercase n. Because genotypes are letters. Now, what are the phenotypes for each allele? Phenotypes is the physical looks. Well, it says right here, normal height, comma, N, capital N, that means normal. So that means that the other one has to be short. So capital N equals normal, lowercase n equals short. Okay? Copy this down, moving on. Let me move my face a little bit again. Now, there is going to be a different term, a different name. Instead of me saying capital and lowercase and uppercase, lowercase, we're going to call them a specific way. So we're going to use the word dominant and the word recessive. Those are super important, guys. So go ahead and copy this, then I'll keep explaining. Okay, so you know how the whole time I've been saying capital, lowercase? I'm not going to do that anymore. We're going to have to use vocabulary. The vocabulary for this is dominant, means uppercase. It means capital letter, big B, for example. Or and recessive means lowercase, okay, little b. So in this case, we have a dominant B, which is the is the genotype, is the letter, and then the phenotype is brown. So dominant B is brown. And over here we have recessive B, which means little b, is blue. So dominant is the one that's going to be observed. Dominant is the one that's going to be shown. Recessive is the one that's going to be hidden. So what do I mean by that? Once you start combining letters, dominant wins, always. That's why it's called dominant. Dominant wins, recessive loses. Keep that in mind. So in this case, right, you have a bunch of B's, capitals, dominant. The person's going to have brown eyes. On the bottom here, you have a bunch of little b's, which is recessive b's. The person's going to have blue eyes. But what if you have a mixture? What if you have both? Well, I just told you, dominant wins. So this person, if you have this combination of letters, that person is going to still going to have brown eyes. Okay. Check for understanding number 4. Yellow seed is what to green? So if you look here, there's a yellow has a capital Y. So that means that this is stronger. So this is dominant. And then green seed is what? Green is a lowercase. So that means that it's recessive. Okay. Now, if you combine the letters, we're going to do that later. If you combine the letters, you're going to get a combination. All you do is just combine one of each. So here, that's the answer for the genotype. That's the third question there. Okay. Pause the video, moving on. More practice. So check for understanding number 5. We're going to be comparing the dominant or recessive, right? So here, in corn plants, normal height is N. That is dominant to short height. So lowercase n, First of all, and I forgot to put it here, when you have these letters, is that dominant or recessive? That's recessive because both of them are lowercase. I cannot do it, but I want you to do it. Circle recessive. If you don't do it, you're losing points. Circle recessive. Now, is that going to be short or tall? Short or normal? But look here, you have to look over here, right? Well, normal is capital and then short is lowercase. And this is lowercase, so the answer is short. Don't forget to circle here. Now, what about the next one? Capital N, capital N. Is that normal or short? Well, that's going to be capital, capital. That's going to be capital, right? It's normal. But is that dominant or recessive? Well, dominant is capital, so this should be dominant. Circle dominant. Now, what about here? You have combination. You have a capital letter with a lowercase letter. Which one wins? The capital or the lowercase? The capital, the dominant. So circle dominant. And because that's dominant, which is it going to be tall? Sorry, is it going to be normal or short? The answer is normal because it has a capital letter, right? This is basically what you're going to be doing. So make sure you understand this. If you don't get it, make sure you ask. Let's move on. We're almost done, guys. Checking for understanding number 6, dominant recessive traits. So in this case, we have pointy nose, capital P, is dominant to round nose, lowercase p. So remember, dominant is the capital letter. So which one is the capital letter? Is it round or pointy? It's right there. Pointy nose, capital P is dominant, period. So capital P equals pointy nose. So if that's capital P is, sorry, I just got distracted. If capital P is dominant, the other option needs to be the lowercase. Now, be careful. A lot of students make mistakes here. The other option is round nose, and you're going to want to put an R, right? Because round starts with R. You cannot do that. It needs to be the same letter that you use on the top. So the answer has to be lowercase p. Okay? Don't put an R because that's going to be wrong. I know that you're like, oh, well, it starts with R. I know it does. But since you already picked a P, you have to use the same letter for the bottom. Okay? So pointy nose, round nose. This is dominant. This is recessive. Copy this. Let's move on. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. You start combining terms. So we talked about how, dominant is capital letter, and then lowercase is recessive. Now we're going to talk about when you have two letters combined. So when you have two letters, you're going to say homozygous. Homozygous means the same. Okay? If you want to copy this, pause the video, copy it, then listen to me. This is the most important part. Homozygous is when you have two letters together that are the same. For example, capital B, right? Dominant B, dominant B. Now, because those are dominant, you say homozygous dominant. That means two letters that are the same and both of them are dominant, right? Homozygous dominant. Now, if you have lowercase b, or you can say recessive B, that is called homozygous recessive because you have two letters that are the same that are lowercase. So homozygous, the same, recessive, little b, okay? Now, if you have this combination, capital B, lowercase b, that is called heterozygous. Heterozygous means different, that the two letters are different. Now, I don't mean like an A and a B. I mean like a big letter and a little letter. Remember, you can never have like an A and a B. Like that doesn't work. So heterozygous is when there's two different alleles, two different options. You have this person has a gene for the brown eyes and a gene for the blue eyes. But we already know that, we already taught you that in this case, the brown one wins because that one is dominant. So this is called heterozygous. This is called homozygous. But you have to specify. If you say capital homozygous, you have to say homozygous dominant. If you're talking about both of the letters being lowercase, it's homozygous recessive. Okay. Practice. What are the genotypes of the parents? So here at the top, these are the parents. Okay. So these are the parents, and they're going to be crossing with each other. So the way what you're doing here is this parent is tall, and this parent is dwarf, right? This plant. they're going to make a baby. They're going to make a seed that's going to turn into another plant. The plants, the babies are going to look like this. All the babies are going to be tall. And we'll talk about the details of this tomorrow, but for now, just the vocabulary. So what are the genotypes? Remember, genotypes is letters. So you have a capital T and lowercase t, right? This is one parent, this is the other parent. Now, what are the phenotypes of the parents? So physically, how do they look like? Well, this one is tall and this one is dwarf. So tall and dwarf. Which one of those two is dominant? Which one is the stronger one? Well, in this case, the capital T is with the tall and the lowercase t is with the dwarf. So in this case, tall is dominant. And which one is recessive? Which one is weaker? The other option, which is dwarf. Okay? So that is all. If you didn't understand, make sure you ask. There's a practice to go with this. Okay? Thank you.